Well, good afternoon and welcome you to our Motor Vehicles Committee. Thank you for coming. I know there's several committees meeting this time and you're having to make some decisions on where you need to be, but we appreciate those that are attending with us today. And you'll find in your folders, I think, your subcommittee assignments that we've put in place for this session. So this time we're going to ask Representative Prince if he'll open our meeting with an invocation.
Let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for another opportunity to do the business of the state of Georgia. Father, we ask that all we do here be pleasing unto you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
And we thank our Legislative Council aide for being here today, Jenna and Craig, our budget analysts. So. All right, at this time we have a bill before us. Being presented, House Bill 136, being presented by the sweetheart of the Capitol, Chairman Amy Carter. So it's an honor to have you with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And we will at this time hear what you have to say to us, Chairman.
Well, I would love to share with you. I bring before you House Bill 136, and I've given, I think Representative Perkle may need one of those. Okay. This is a summary by section of the bill. When y'all have gone before the Department of Driver Services and renewed your license every however many years you signed up for the previous time, did they ask if you have the driver's license on you? Do y'all recall that? So, Judge, they did last week. Did you forfeit that driver's license when you did forfeit it? Because they want it, right? They kept it. My goodness, wouldn't it have been nice to have kept your driver's license, even if it were no longer valid? But yeah, just for scrapbooking or for various reasons, you know. This is what I looked like 20 years ago, let's say, kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway, Section 1 addresses this. If you'll look, Section 1 would allow a customer who is seeking to obtain or renew a license or permit to be able to keep their old card. And we have plenty of folks who would like to keep that old card, but you do have to, at this time, you do have to give that card up when you renew. What they would do, Section 1 continues with, it would be the old card that would now be void when you renew it, would be marked, and the department's working on that. It would have a mark on it to show that it's no longer valid. And also, when you get your renewal, there's somewhat of a dummy driver's license that they print. It's in that my understanding is that it's an interim driver's license. We would eliminate that, and it would save the department $2 million annually for not having to print those. You would have a receipt that you would use to show that you are valid with a driver's license until it comes in. And usually the turnaround for that is about a week, isn't it? 1 to 2 weeks. Yeah, 1 to 2 weeks on that that hard driver's license coming in. All right, let's move on to Section 2. I didn't realize this because I don't have a blind or visually impaired person in my direct family, but if you do, or if someone does, they have the capability to have a 14-year-old or older to get a driver's license. So I'm guessing 14 and 15-year-old to get a license to drive them around because they can't personally drive. And what Section 2 does is it allows, well, one of the questions on the form is the blind person has to check whether or not he or she has previously held a driver's license. And if not, then they're not allowed to have the 14 or 15-year-old receive a license. Well, if you're born blind or visually impaired, you're not going to have ever had a driver's license. So Section 2 cleans up that language to allow someone who is born blind or visually impaired the opportunity to still have someone drive at that age of 14 or 15. Section 3, housekeeping item. Last year, we had House Bill 806, which changed the standard term of a driver's license to 8 years, but we overlooked the license fee for an 8-year commercial driver's license. And so last year, we changed the 8-year to 32, but we overlooked the CDL and left it at 20. We're just changing that to 32 also. It is 32, right? Correct. Okay. This was just an oversight on last year's bill. Section 4 is another housekeeping item. And this one has to do with a 2-year statute of limitation on driver's license suspensions. And I think I'm going to let Michael explain that because he does a better job of that than I do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Representative Carter. So last year, as Representative Carter mentioned, we had a bill. It was House Bill 806. It was carried by Representative Kevin Tanner, and it created a statute of limitations on driver's license suspensions. So the threshold that was created last year was 2 years. So if a court reports a conviction to us 2 or more years after the fact, we will still put it on the driving record, but we will not impose a suspension. There was one exception to that, however, and that was for commercial drivers. If it is a commercial driver, regardless of when we receive the conviction, we will have to impose the appropriate commercial disqualification. So the issue here in this particular section is how that provision or how that exception is worded. It just applies to those commercial violations under Article 7. And we sort of hemmed ourselves in because there are other violations outside of Article 7 that should result in a commercial disqualification. So really what we need to do in this section is broaden that language a little bit, and so that's the reason why we're just striking through that verbiage that specifies Article 7. So we're actually broadening that somewhat.
Section 5 extends the same provisions of Section 1 to customers who make an in-person application with driver services. Section 6 corrects the fee for an 8-year identification to be $32, again being consistent with the amount up in Section 3. And Section 7 would authorize the Commissioner of Driver Services to contract with a debt collection agency or an attorney to assist in the collection of delinquent fees owed the state of Georgia. And where that comes from, y'all will recall, those of you who've been here as long as I have, we had that super speeder bill, and we're trying to collect super speeder fees on those who are not Georgians. And this will allow the commissioner to pursue that debt from those drivers from other states who receive a super speeder bill here in the state of Georgia and have no real reason to pay the fee at this current time, at least in their own minds they don't. So we would be giving the commissioner that ability to do that. And that's the bill. Any questions?
Do we have any questions from committee members? Excuse me. Representative Prince.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Carter, going back to Section 1, I just for clarity.
Sure.
The old cards, what is DDS doing with those now? And it may be, I'm sorry.
So today, when we get the old card, we destroy it.
Destroy it.
If it is a Georgia-issued driver's license or issued by another one of the 50 states. Now, if it is someone that has a foreign driver's license, let's say it's somebody from Germany, it's a German driver's license, because of the cost that is involved with a foreign driver's license, we are allowing people to keep those foreign driver's licenses. We will make a notation on the driving record, on GCIC, but they will get to keep their license.
Okay, and so your department, as far as false ID, and what I understand why you want to keep it from memories and things like that, but for someone else using that ID for not to drive because it's expired, but purchase alcohol or things like that, get into clubs, stuff like. Do your department have any issues with that?
Well, even under this proposal, we would be marking the card in such a way that it's apparent that it's no longer valid, whether we stamp it as, punch it as invalid or expired. And you know, there'll be some outreach involved and training involved, so folks will know when, you know, law enforcement, for example, when they see the card that's been punched in this manner, that this is a card that's no longer valid.
Okay, and last one, Mr. Chair, if you please. Now, that use, the receipt piece that you talked about using now, that way you want to, so does that receipt have a photo on it, or if I'm pulled over and I have that receipt, what's to say that's me? Is that, or do you use the old photo? I'm
Right,
sure,
it's a very good question. So the process that we're proposing today is very similar, and I say very similar, it's actually the same process that we use today for customers that renew a driver's license online. They will print out this same receipt that we envision issuing to customers that we serve in person. It does not have a photograph, but it does have a barcode. It has all of the customer's personal information, and the law enforcement officer will be able to run that information through GCIC. And a lot of law enforcement agencies that have what we call the MDTs, or the mobile data terminals, in their vehicles, they can actually see the photograph through GCIC. DDS actually shares that photograph through GCIC. So if the officer has one of the mobile data terminals, they can see the photograph.
Thank you, Representative Prince. Representative Klein.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman Carter, too, as well, because I do have my old passport, my first passport, when I was 22. It's got a big hole in it, but I still do have it, and I have my first college ID, but it's got a big hole in it, too, but it looks a little different, so I can understand that. My question, I guess I like to say, is on line 218, and my question is, you know, I think the commissioner made contact with a debt collecting agency or attorney doing business, but it was within or outside the state that kind of just, it got me, because I'm a true believer that you know, that we do anything better than anybody as far as collection, and outside the state, it just got me. I mean, so I just wonder why we couldn't keep it inside the state, I guess.
And I don't think we would have any strong feelings about that. If that is the desire of the committee, then I think.
No, I mean, I was just concerned, you know, that when I read it, I mean, within or outside was just, so, thank you, Chairman Carter, that was my only.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Ridley.
My question is on line 113, for the 8 years class A, B, C, and M commercial driver's license that requires a road test, it says $82. Is that changed, that price changed any?
It is, it's being increased up to 82 to account for the $32 for the commercial.
Okay, so it was 50 before?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Chairman Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a couple of issues I want to bring up. The first one, tell me how many millions of dollars are owed on the super speeder bills, on the super speeder.
I'm going to actually go back
delinquents.
to our Commissioner Spencer Moore, and our Commissioner Spencer Moore and our General Counsel Angelique McClendon are actually joining us today. But the audit that was done by DOAA last year, I believe it was upwards of $12 million.
That's outstanding.
Outstanding. And again, those are non-resident drivers passing through
How
the state
much
of
did
Georgia.
you say?
12 million.
Any way of ascertaining how much of these were Georgia drivers as opposed to people coming through the state that were never told that they owed a super speeder?
The 12 million is non-Georgia drivers. That is all of the non-residents passing through the state of Georgia that have gotten super speeder fines and haven't paid them.
Non-Georgia residents.
Non-Georgia residents.
So we're talking about turning these over to a collection agency to go after folks from out of the state.
Correct.
Correct. See, with
Georgia,
Georgia,
that'd make Georgia a destination state, doesn't it?
well, the thing that is different about Georgia drivers is, because they are a Georgia driver, they're licensed here in the state, we have the ability to suspend their license for non-payment, but we don't have that same tool for non-Georgia drivers.
So under the current statutes, when somebody receives a moving violation in the state of Georgia, and it's it's supposed to be flipped back on their license for whatever state, isn't it? Didn't we deal with this years ago, that if you have a violation in another state because of reciprocity with that state?
Correct. We will send the speeding violation to the home state, and they can, take whatever action they need to in the home state. The difference is a super speeder is specific to Georgia. So,
What you're saying is that the super speeder is an anomaly, that nobody in the other 49 states has even got a clue what this is.
not gonna go that far.
All right.
Thank you, Chairman Powell. All right, we have a couple more questions. Chairman Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Carter, I have two questions, I think, and then a statement that may answer some of what Representative Dewey had concerning the collections and using attorneys. In Section 1, if you're then given this receipt, as you say, as they do online, and I remember this just 2 weeks ago, I had to get mine renewed and go through carrying all that stuff out there.
But the good
I'm not gonna
news,
get into that.
if you get the star, just keep in mind, when you get that star on your driver's license, which means that you've brought it the first time,
No,
you don't have to bring it anymore.
Oh, yes, they told me, I've already taken it 4 years ago, and I had to take it again. I'm not gonna get into that. But my question, though, is, and I did, I promise you. Will this receipt have an expiration date on it? And the reason I say that, in your comment a minute ago, you said that you normally get your license within a week.
Week or two.
I got mine in like 15 days, but I was told you're gonna receive it within 45 days. Now, I don't know if that was right or wrong, I'm just telling you what I was told. And so I would think that it would need to have a date so that if the person hadn't received it, then they're not gonna be penalized for that.
I think it'll be 45 days.
It would probably be in line with the term on the interim today that we issue at the center. I think that's 45 days, if I'm not.
Well, I was told that I would receive it within 45, but I was just saying this receipt, is it gonna have an expiration date so that a person knows, hey, I don't have my license yet and I'm fixing to run out, so they
Right.
could contact the department and do something about
And
it.
it will definitely have an expiration.
All right, then concerning Section 7, and the reason that I bring this up is less than an hour ago, I was in a committee meeting of judiciary having to do with using the government or the state using attorneys to collect debts for them or fees. And there's nothing wrong with that. But they were charging, most attorneys now doing that were on a contingency fee. And that had gotten out of hand, so we just approved a bill that will be coming possibly to the floor, having to do with the contingency part of hiring attorneys to collect money for the state, if that makes sense.
It does.
And I would think that if this would need to comport to that, and this had to do with forfeitures going through DA's offices where they are hiring outside counsel, and they are then doing that on a contingency basis instead of an hourly basis or something along those lines. And I was just thinking, is this going to comport with that? And I think it would need to, so that, as in those instances, you had folks collecting these debts making, I promise you, $300,000 and $400,000.
Sure. I believe
Where
it.
an assistant DA is making $50,000.
Right.
And then concerning why you might have to use outside attorneys, particularly if you were in another state, unless a lawyer from the state of Georgia is licensed in Alabama, as an example. he or she could not go over there and file that and try to collect it. So that's the reason, do that you gotta, in my opinion, gotta have it that you could use outside counsel out of the state of Georgia, because unless you are licensed there, you can't practice there.
Okay.
So you may have to use counsel from some other state, Illinois or Texas or wherever.
Okay. Makes good sense.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Perkle.
Thank you, and this is for the gentleman, and I apologize, I did peruse this, this bill, last night. I did not catch this, and I did not look at Code Section 40-5-53 for Section 4. And what we're doing here is blotting out on line 153 for a violation of Article 7 of this chapter. My concern being now as the new code section 40-5-53 will read, any report of any conviction, regardless of the date of such report. It sounds unnecessarily vague, that and not having read 40-5-53, that might be completely fine, but it sounds like it is more vague than I mean, it's not just a violation of Article 7. These specified violations, but now it's any report of any conviction. Not being an attorney, and there's some here that are significantly more knowledgeable than I am in that, but it sounded to me like it was unnecessarily vague and might cause us problems down the road.
Jenna?
Judge?
Yeah, I guess we could,
I mean, that, it would be, you know, you could get a shoplifting report conviction, but they're looking for purpose of disqualifying a person's commercial driver's license. So, I mean, they'll get the report, and I believe at that point they will decide if it's at a level to disqualify them. So I think their issue was that they were limited in the information they were getting by saying Article 7. I mean, you could maybe just do this chapter, because those are moving violations, but I'm betting there's maybe stuff in Title 6.
It just concerned me when you say of any conviction, regardless of the date of such report. That you know, I think we want to fine tune the law, and that just seems like it throws it much broader. But I'm one of the more junior members.
Conviction?
Well,
Yeah.
I would want to defer to the counsel for the department on that, if I could, just because they would know exactly what the CDLs, those crimes are that would disqualify them from those, because I don't want to.
Would you
because
just come up and identify yourself and
Angelique McClendon, general counsel.
come over to the microphone?
Angelique McClendon, General Counsel for DDS. I think this only applies to commercial driver's licenses. So this is only for the purpose of disqualifying a person's commercial driver's license. So as it stands now, you know, clerks can send us, as she mentioned, shoplifting. We wouldn't apply that to anyone's driving history because it doesn't do anything. We don't have the authority to affect someone's driving history for a shoplifting, for instance. We get all our authority to suspend or sanction someone's driving privileges from statute. So the correction here is because a violation of Article 7 was too narrow for commercial driving purposes. So, for instance, if a person is convicted of trafficking, drug trafficking, it wouldn't necessarily affect their, now, as of 2015, it wouldn't necessarily affect their non-commercial driving privileges, but it would affect their driving privileges. And drug trafficking is not in Article 7 of this chapter. So that's one reason, that's one example of why we needed to make this change.
And there again, Mr. Chairman, would I respond?
Please.
And there again, that's and that was kind of goes to my point.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a list of offenses that the state of Georgia would deem necessary to revoke driving privileges for these people, and I mean, this is their livelihood.
Yeah.
I mean, this is their they protect it, you know, they really do. And I understand that while drug trafficking is a serious offense, and it's not in Article 7 of this, if you use that same standard, who is the one that is the arbiter of what rises to the level of disqualifying? Is it a shoplifting violation, or is it being a drug trafficker, or is there something in between? And who decides that?
It's listed, what disqualifies or what affects a commercial driver's license is driven by federal regulations. And we also have that codified in our statutes as well. But
Okay.
so we don't arbitrarily decide that. We don't decide that in-house. That's driven by federal regulations and state statutes as to whether or not we can revoke or cancel or suspend a person's driver's license. So the only thing this change does is it allows us to comply with federal regulations as to applying commercial driver's license disqualifications. So it doesn't so what happened last year for OCGA 4553, the change last year was to put sort of a statute of limitations, for lack of a better term, on whether or not we could apply convictions to a driver's license because it was over 2 years old, or if it was 10 years old or something like that. And so this change basically says that it might not apply for people who have commercial driver's licenses. So we don't have the authority to put a statute of limitations on whether or not we will apply a conviction for commercial driver's license disqualification purposes because of federal regulations.
Okay.
That satisfy you, Representative Perkle?
Does it satisfy me? I have no further questions,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Good questions. Legislative Council are we comfortable from our standpoint with that?
Yeah, it's the will of the committee if they wanna, I would say, it sounds like these violations are all over the code, and that's why it sounds like the violations are all over the code, and that's for simplicity, not listing out each violation of a code section of the federal laws. That's why we've removed this, so they can get reports from all of these crimes that would disqualify someone from a CDL. And I think there's just not a simpler way to do it unless you list out every code section that would result in a suspension.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any further questions? All right. I think Chairman Powell has requested a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I have an amendment that I'd like to offer.
We need to get a motion on the underlying bill.
Oh, okay. You understand? We need at this time, we'll entertain a motion on the, have a motion, have a second? Second. All right. Mr. Powell. Thank you.
Have y'all distributed these? I have an amendment that I'd like for the committee to consider. And I know I've sort of caught my friends at Driver Services off guard with this, and I'll apologize for that, but I do think it's got some merit. And this deals with temporary licenses, permits, special ID cards issued pursuant to code section that include on this driver's license. And currently, I think they have a Michael, if you could help me, what's the current term we put on these licenses?
For driver's licenses, permits, ID cards.
What's the term that y'all put on the brand on it?
Any card issued to a non-citizen is marked
Term.
limited term.
Limited term. And and I'd been talking to them about this issue, but it seems to me that if someone is in this country, either by visa legally or illegally, as the federal laws have required that we do licensing, that if nothing else with this limited term brand, it should also have non-citizen, limited term. That way, whether you're here legally, illegally, whatever the case, it would be point blank, it would be spelled out that you're a non-citizen so that that card couldn't be used for certain activities such as attempting to register to vote in a municipal election or anything else. It's just a very simple change. What I've put in this language, I know that the department, given the cost, anytime there's a change to anything that they do down there, there's a cost to it. And I know that they're currently have an RFP out now, and I think the driver's licensing RFP is going to change in July of 2018, next year. And the way this amendment's drafted, it would say that at that time, that the non-citizen / if they wish to have the limited term on there or whatever, that would be added to it. They can do anything they want to do as long as it's got non-citizen clearly on that brand. And there would be no cost involved because it would go into effect next July of 18 after the RFP and they go into the new driver's licensing. Did I explain that correctly, Michael?
Couldn't have done it better myself.
Thank you so much. And I would.
All right, we have a few questions.
Chairman Powell,
Chairman
thank you for bringing
Jones.
that amendment to this bill. I was willing to sponsor the driver courtesy card bill last year that came out of the Senate, and it obviously went nowhere in the House. But so my question, Chairman Powell, is: do you think the addition of that non-citizen verbiage would have any impact on that individual's ability to apply for social services, for example? Or how do you have any?
I
any
really have
projection
no
or
idea
whatever?
about that. I'm more interested in the security
Right.
standpoint
I
and
understand.
things like that. If a non-citizen or an illegal can apply for social services, I don't think this is, the only thing this shows that they're a non-citizen.
And the reason I ask the question that way is the driver's license as that we currently issue is considered a kind of a gateway, if you will, to opening up non-citizens, illegals, whatever, legal or illegal, to be able to apply for and receive social services,
Right.
welfare benefits and such. I was just curious if you had if you'd given that any thought in terms of that
No,
language.
and it'd probably take somebody a lot more educated than me to do that. I just think that if you're here, I don't care whether you're a regional vice president of BMW or Mercedes or Coca-Cola or who you are. If you're in this in our country and you've got a driver's license is issued, or according to the some federal rules and regs that currently state that illegals can get a driver's license, then I think at the very least it ought to have on there non-citizen. And if it's wherever the definition term limited or limited term came from, if they want to put non-citizen term limited, I don't think non-citizen is a very offensive term to be used. It just clearly states it when somebody sees that ID, that driver's license, that they're a non-citizen.
Right, before we go any further with questions, I'm gonna let Chairman Carter give us her response to this
Well,
action.
I'm certainly, I'm good with whatever the committee decides. I mean, this is a department bill, and I'm honored that they asked me to carry it for them. But, you know, I'm certainly open to whatever the committee decides.
Thank you. Representative Prince.
Going back to the amendment, Chairman Powell, I'm still, and I think, I heard what you said and I understand that, but I'm still trying to just help me understand what value added the non-citizen piece would bring up. And the reason I'm asking that is because hypothetically, if you're pulled over for not being a citizen, you're pulled over for hopefully a traffic violation or something like that.
Sure.
And now that I know that you are a non-citizen, what value added is that?
I don't think there's any value added as far as anything on the negative side. If you have a driver's license, DDS is required under federal law to issue driver's licenses even to a lot of the illegals. Is that not correct?
To illegals?
We do not issue to
Yeah, I
illegals.
think so.
Beg your pardon?
We do not issue to illegals.
The terminology that the federal government put on y'all that we've been talking about. What was the terms that we were talking in the office about
Deferred action?
deferred action, that what was it, the feds had said that we could not do certain things. You had to issue a driver's license to some of the folks, the children of.
The deferred action, correct.
Right. But what you also have is you have citizens here, people who have come into the country. And whether they're here with a visa or they're not, if they're a non-citizen, just clearly stamp their license that they're a non-citizen with deferred action.
I guess my question is, will they have a, are you saying that they would be able to get a license if they're not a citizen or, I mean, well, not so much a citizen, but
Well-
as long as they're not illegal, right?
Anytime we're dealing with a customer who's a non-citizen,
Non-citizen.
they've got to show documented proof that they're in the country legally.
Okay.
So, I mean, if they're undocumented, they are not going to get a license or an ID card.
Right. But what we're suggesting is just spell it out, brand it on the top, just like the limited term. Just brand it out that you're a non-citizen. Not an offensive statement, because if they're here, then they're not. Just says that they're a non-citizen.
Yeah, and I don't take any offense. I just trying to figure out what value added would that do. Okay.
Thank you, Representative Smith. Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you too, Chairman Powell. You know, I guess, you know, where I was going with it was, you know, I guess we've kind of brought it back home, because if you're illegal, you can't get licenses at all anyway, which is where we were. And what Representative Prince was saying, the added value, and what I was looking forward to was something that would probably say is what Representative Prince didn't go further with is that an official seeing non-citizen on a license, you know, what is his reaction to him not knowing what the definition of a non-citizen is? Because when I heard the term non-citizen, I thought it was illegal, someone here illegal, not someone that is a citizen. So I mean, I just have concerns with that on a documentation of branding. So I just wanted to make sure that if it was an added value, I could understand. If I could also understand if when me as a legislator thought that when you said non-citizen, I thought it was someone illegal, what the general public is thinking, and also what will someone that pulls someone over, what would they be thinking?
I think if there's any value added, it just clearly states that this person with this driver's license is a non-citizen if they want to attempt to use that license for anything other than a driver's license.
Thank you, Representative. Council, may I ask you, do you see any issues here that we could be getting into that we?
I haven't, as far as the question about how it can affect other benefits, it's not something I've looked into at times, so probably couldn't comment on that.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. You making that as a motion,
Yes, sir, I do.
All right. We have a motion to for the amendment that Chairman Powell so stated, Amendment 390179, that I think everyone had the copy of. Do we have a second to the motion? Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion to amend Senate Bill, House Bill 136, as stated? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Okay, let's get a hand count then. All in favor of the motion, raise your hands. All opposed? Okay. 4-3, motion carries. All right, now we need to act on the bill, right, as amended.
And the motion is gonna be House Bill 136 do pass by substitute.
All right, we now will entertain a motion that House Bill 136 do pass by substitute. Do we have a motion? Motion, second? Motion, second? All in favor, raise your hands. All opposed? Three. Okay. All right, the bill passes as amended. Before we leave, Mike, there's a couple of
Can
guests
I-
you have with you that we'd like.
Can
for
I
you to-
clarify one thing?
Yes.
So the fees, the super speeder fees owed by non-Georgia residents, I've got a current figure, it's 18 million,
18.
18 million.
Would you introduce the commissioner and
Sure.
his, for the members of the
He's
committee?
not really new to us. He's been at Driver Services for about 4 years. He came over from the Governor's Office of Highway Safety, Spencer Moore, Dublin native, and I'm not gonna steal his thunder. I'm gonna turn it over to him.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Chairman, how you doing today?
Yes, sir.
Thank you
coming
for,
being with
first
us.
of all, for hearing our bill. Again, Mike has introduced me. I've been with the state of Georgia about 20 years. I worked in pardons and paroles, worked with the Governor's Office of Highway Safety for a number of years, and I've been with the DDS for the last 4. I'm excited to come to the department and hopefully continue the great work that we do as an agency. Not many folks know, but we service about 4 million folks a year, as well as we answer the telephone call over about 1.3 million folks a year. So our department, with about 1,000 people, we do a pretty good, a lot of interaction with our citizens, as well as those folks who need our service from around the other states on a daily basis. So excited to take over the department, and very thankful to Burt Brantley, who was commissioner while I was there, as well as Rob Michael, who was commissioner, and all the great things that they've provided as a legacy.
Thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate you coming and being with us. We certainly look forward to having you back and working with you on issues relating to this committee.
Yes, sir. I'm excited to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll welcome your attorney, your counsel as well. Thank you for being with us. Before we leave, Chairman Powell has a statement he'd like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the members of the committee and to those in an audience today. This committee, the Motor Vehicle Committee, has a long and a distinguished role in the House of Representatives. When I was elected a few years ago, Jerry Jackson was the chairman of this committee, and soon after that, Bobby Parham was named the chairman of this committee. And I think it would be a disgrace not to get through this day without recognizing former Representative Bobby Parham, chairman of the Motor Vehicle Committee for right at 20 years.
I understand him.
Bobby was, he left the legislature and served on the DOT board for a term, has been in declining health for several years. And I would just like to say, I think we should all just give a minute of silence to mark his passing. And if everybody could have lived as much fun in life as Bobby Parham had, you'd have a bigger smile on your face you've ever seen.
Well, you say that with a smile on your face.
There's a reason both of my knees are worn out.
Please, if you will join us in a moment of silence for former Representative and Chairman Parham. We thank you. Thank you for bringing that to us, Chairman Powell, and thank you for being with us today. Good to see you, Mr. Maury, and all our other guests. Thank you.